Sally Cherrington, and on behalf of the Allen Organ Company, I'd like to welcome you to this introduction to playing the organ. Perhaps you are someone who plays the piano or another keyboard instrument, and you are considering beginning the study of classical organ. Playing the organ is not only an interesting and challenging avocation, but also a skill which is very much in demand in most communities. As a matter of fact, in a given community over a week's time, there probably will be more demand for the services of an organist than for any other classical musician. Perhaps you are a pianist who has already started converting to the organ. If so, you have no doubt discovered that the demands of piano keyboard technique have prepared you well for organ manual technique. However, the organ requires not only the ability to play independently with both hands, but also the added coordination of playing with both feet. The organist must also understand the function of a myriad of console controls and stops, and be able to manipulate these controls to achieve expressive musical results. In this video, we will be dealing with techniques for playing the manuals and pedals, as well as providing a basic introduction to the organ console. Subsequent videos in this series deal with the topics of hymn playing, registration, and accompanying techniques. We will begin with a basic orientation to the console. We will be using both this 2-manual Allen digital computer organ and this 3-manual instrument. Let's begin by adjusting the bench. Do not put a bench pad on your bench, as it will make you sit in an unnaturally high position and make it difficult to pivot while playing the pedals. As in playing the piano, the position of the bench is critical, as it will affect your balance and comfort of the console. You should be supported by the bench but able to move freely. Suppose I wanted to position myself at this console. I would begin by sitting and being sure that I was seated in the center of the bench. The next thing to check is where your feet fall on the pedals. Your feet should naturally fall straight down so that your toes are hitting about 2 inches behind the black pedals. This would create about a right angle at your knee. If you're seated too close to the console, you will have to sit back further on the bench and you'll be unable to pivot. You'll be cut off here at the knees. On the other hand, if the bench is too far back, you will be forced to sit very close to the front of the bench. When you start playing the manuals, your upper body will have to lean back to counterbalance the weight of your lower body. This will result in a position that's a lot better for water skiing than it is for playing the organ. Now that we are in position at the console, we are almost ready to start playing. Let's begin by taking a look at this 3-manual organ. When we start playing, we will be playing first on the grate. The grate is the main keyboard on the organ. It has the fullest stops and is the keyboard most often used for hymn playing and for other ensemble combinations. It is also sometimes used to accompany solo stops on the other divisions. On this organ, we have the choir, the grate, and the swell, so the grate is the middle keyboard. On this instrument, the sounds are activated by the use of draw knobs, which pull in and out. The draw knobs for the grate are located here, on the right side of the console. Now let's take a look at this 2-manual console. On this organ, the grate is the bottom keyboard, while the swell is the upper keyboard. We are going to begin by playing on the grate, because it is the keyboard closest in height to the piano keyboard. The stops on this organ are controlled by stop tabs instead of draw knobs, although some 2-manual organs do have draw knobs and some 3-manual organs have stop tabs. The stops for the grate are located here. Try experimenting with the feel of the organ keyboard by putting both hands on the grate and playing a simple legato Baroque keyboard piece at a moderate tempo. If you do not have any organ music on this order, try something like a selection from Bach's Anna Magdalena notebook. Your hand and wrist position should be basically the same as on the piano. I will play the opening section of a trio by Zachau. Let's draw the 8-foot principle on the grate. Now we will try the same thing on the swell. As we have seen, the swell is the top keyboard on both the 2 and 3 manual organs. It is used as a contrast to the great ensemble combinations, to accompany great solo stops, or to play solo stops or combinations. The swell often contains a reed chorus, which can be used by itself for dramatic effects or combined with the full swell and used in French literature. On this console, the stops for the swell are located on the top stop rail. Let's choose an 8-foot flute in this division. On the organ, the 8-foot swell flute is the flute boucher 8, although on your organ it may be called the gedeckt 8 or something similar. Be sure that when playing on the swell, you maintain a high enough wrist position to support your hand. Often the higher hand and wrist position required on the swell seems unnatural initially to pianists who are used to playing on a lower keyboard. Obviously, there is much less resistance to the keys than on the piano. You undoubtedly have also noticed that the volume of the sound has nothing to do with how hard you strike the keys. On the organ, the volume is controlled through the use of the expression pedals. On this organ, the pedal on the far left controls the volume of the great and pedal divisions. The pedal in the middle expresses the swell division. The pedal to the right of the 3 expression pedals is the crescendo pedal. This pedal is slightly raised from the height of the other expression pedals. Unlike the great pedal and the swell pedal, which increase the volume of the stops that are already on as they are opened, the crescendo pedal will actually add stops. Observe what happens if we do not draw any stops on the manuals or pedal and hold a chord while opening the crescendo pedal. This enables the organist to work up to a full organ effect. Let's return to the keyboards. Generally on the organ, we're aiming for a legato touch. This must be done totally by finger legato through the choice of good fingering, since there is no sustain pedal to cover up the breaks. Because of this, we probably rely more on special legato finger techniques than you would on the piano, since once you take your finger off of a note, the sound is gone. Let's take a look at several of these techniques. The first that we will investigate is crossing, a technique used frequently on the piano in playing scales. We just use it more often and in more of a variety of passages on the organ. In the following example, you will see an alternation between 2, 3, and 4 in the crossing pattern. The next technique is substitution, which is used quite frequently on the organ. In this technique, you strike the notes with one set of fingers or one finger, and then switch to a different set of fingering, allowing that part of your hand to be free to move up or down the keyboard. The key to substituting successfully is to do it in the rhythm of the music. Another way of sustaining legato is by sliding from the black to white keys. This technique is sometimes called a finger glissando. It will be demonstrated here using 2 fingers at a time, but is probably used more often with 1 finger at a time. You will notice that the same fingers are used on the black notes as on the white notes. The key to playing this successfully is to maintain the pressure while you are pulling down from the black to white notes. final clever technique for maintaining the legato on the organ is to use your thumb as if it is really two fingers, using the base and the tip of the thumb individually. On the following scale, you will see the first half of the scale played using the thumb in a substitution pattern, and the final part of the scale used alternating between the base of the tip. In this way, you can actually play entire scales by using only your thumb. I'd like to play a piece for you now which illustrates all of these finger legato techniques. This is a chorale prelude by Buxtehude based on the chorale How Lovely Shines the Morning Star. You will notice that the thumb technique we discussed is used in the opening measures. There is also a lot of crossing, as well as a lot of substitution, which is necessitated because the chorale melody is in the upper voice. If substitution is not used, there will be no fingers free to play the inner voices. It is especially important on the organ that repeated notes are broken and the duration of notes and rests is precise. Since the organ keyboards are not touch sensitive, the length of the note is the only control we have. There is a wealth of organ literature for the manuals only, which makes great music for pianists to use for preludes and offertories because there are no pedals to contend with. Some of the best music of this sort is published by Oxford University. Here we see Book 1 of their volumes of old English organ music for manuals. The English music is particularly good because it was written at a time during the Baroque period when there were no pedal boards on the English organs, and so it's very authentic music. Most organ playing requires legato playing, but there is some detached playing as well. We're going to use an English piece to demonstrate this, a two-part voluntary by Maurice Green. The first section will illustrate typical organ legato playing. The second part of the voluntary is more detached to reinforce the bouncy and rhythmic nature of the piece. It is much more articulated, particularly in the left hand. This helps to highlight the accented beats and large intervals. We turn our attention now to playing the hymns and liturgy. This is not the easiest music to play. It requires a good legato and much attention to repeated notes. Let's start by practicing just the hands. This is easier, and you also want to get in the habit of not doubling the bass line in the hands. This will also allow you to work out the repeated notes. Let's start by choosing a hymn or response that has a slow harmonic rhythm. I'll use Spirit of God Descend Upon My Heart. We will begin by playing only the first phrase and just the soprano part, being careful to break all the repeated notes in this voice. It is particularly important in this hymn to break the repeated notes since they begin the piece. If these notes are not repeated, it will be difficult to discern the tempo. Let's play on the grate. We will draw the principal 8 and montre 8, as well as the octave 4 and prestant 4. Let's try playing that phrase again and add the alto and tenor lines. We will tie the repeated notes in these voices and continue to break the repeated notes in the soprano voice. The system of hymn playing we have just used has involved breaking repeated notes only in the soprano voice. It is also possible to break repeated notes in the soprano and tenor voices. This will aid in moving the rhythm of the piece forward without creating too many holes in the music. A third technique would be to break the repeated notes in the soprano and bass parts. We will discuss this possibility in the section on pedal technique. The final system is to break the repeated notes in all voices. This system of breaking repeated notes in all the voices will provide the most clarity possible in your hymn playing. It is especially useful if you're playing in a room with very live acoustics, or if you accompany a congregation which has a tendency to drag. This technique should not be used, however, if you play in extremely dry acoustics, or if you're playing a slower hymn that has a lot of repeated notes. Further information on the topic of hymn playing is available in our separate video on hymn playing techniques. Now that you have the feel of the organ keyboards, let's begin to explore the phase of organ playing which most pianists find the most challenging, playing the pedals. The pedals are organized in the same pattern of black and white notes as the keyboards. A standard American pedal board, built to the specifications of the American Guild of Organists, has 32 pedals, a range of 2.5 octaves. If you look carefully at this pedal board, you will note that it is concave, meaning that the pedals in the center of the pedal board are lower than those at the outer portions of the pedal board. This complements the natural upward arc of your leg as it swings outward. The pedal board is also radiating. The pedals fan outward rather than being in a straight line, making it easier to reach the pedals at the outer ends of the pedal board. The concave and radiating construction features of American pedal boards make them easier for most people to play than the pedal boards on European organs, which are generally flat and straight. Since there are no pedal board standards in Europe, the distance between pedals is not consistent from one organ to the next. In fact, the number and range of pedals may even vary. The most important tool you will need to play the pedals successfully is a good pair of organ shoes. Organ shoes not only help you to play better, but also help to protect your feet from injury. Shoes should have a wide heel, like a loafer, which is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches high. Shoes which are flat and have no heels will make it very difficult for you to play with both the heel and toe, as you will be forced to rock your foot up and down in order to get your heel low enough to play. The bottom of the shoe should be leather, which will slide well on the pedals. Shoes with rubber or similar substances on the bottom will make you stick to the pedals and make it impossible for you to execute slides from black to white pedals, or even to slide while holding down a white pedal, as is sometimes necessary. High heels or other inappropriate shoes will only hamper your pedal technique. Proper organ shoes are available from a company called Organ Master Shoes in Guilford, Connecticut, which deals exclusively with organ shoes. Or you can purchase tap shoes without taps at a local dance supply store. Both feet are necessary to play the pedals comfortably and smoothly. The left foot only technique, wherein your left foot hops from one pedal to the next, is better suited to hot coals than pedals. It will make it very difficult for you to play a smooth pedal line in hymns and impossible to play most organ literature. Listen to the difference in this hymn section played with just the left foot, then with both feet. beginning to play the pedals, you will be playing with what we call the toes, really the ball of the foot. On a musical score, the notation for using the toe is usually a pointy mark like this. When the mark is above the pedal line, it indicates right toe. When it is below the line, it means left toe. As you become more adept at locating pedals, you will also start playing with the heels. The notation for the use of a heel on a pedal note is a U, or sometimes a small circle. Again, located either above or below the note to indicate right or left foot. The combination of toe and heel creates a good pedal legato. We will begin playing the pedals by experimenting with some pedal exercises. It is wise to work with exercises for the pedals alone so that you can concentrate on proper position and get comfortable with judging distances with your feet. Several organ method books contain pedal exercises. The best ones are in the Little Organ Book by Fleur Peters and The Method of Organ Playing by Harold Gleason. We will begin with the basic exercise for toes only. Make sure you are sitting in the middle of the bench with your knees together and your feet lined up over the center of the pedal board. As we discussed while positioning the bench, you should be playing in this part of the pedal board. Here you are accessible to the black notes, but able to move freely along the white pedals without hitting the black notes. You should not play in this area of the white pedals. Be sure to keep your feet turned in while you are playing. We saw earlier that the pedal board is concave. Therefore, if you play on the inside of your foot, you will naturally work with the line of the pedal board, since your foot swings up as it moves outward. Playing in this position also makes it more likely that you will hit only one pedal at a time, which is generally our goal, instead of inadvertently playing two pedals simultaneously. Not a particularly melodic effect. By playing on the inside of the foot, we mean in this area of the toe, actually the ball of the foot, and this area of the heel. This sensation is one of the most difficult things about the organ for most people to master, so don't be surprised if you feel awkward at first or if you find this difficult or uncomfortable. After all, this is not exactly a normal walking position. It will help if you keep your heels together when playing smaller intervals, say less than a fourth, since it is virtually impossible to play on the outside of your feet while your heels are in this position. As you begin playing, be sure that your knees stay together while you play. This will give you a reference point from which to measure the distance between your feet, no matter where you are on the pedal board. Note that on this organ, the pedal stops are located to the left of the lower stop rail. For practicing the pedal exercises, we are going to choose an 8-foot and 4-foot principle in the pedals. In this case, the octave 8 and choral bass 4. Normally, when you choose a pedal registration, you want to be sure to include at least one 16-foot stop, which provides the characteristic deep bass pedal sound. However, using the 8 and 4-foot pitch stops for exercises will make it much easier for you to hear the pitches. As you begin to play over a larger area of the pedal board, your knees should stay over the area where your feet are playing. Therefore, as you move to the right up the pedal board, you should gradually push off of your left foot so that your body pivots, allowing your knees to constantly stay over your feet. If you need to play on the lower portion of the pedal board, you would push off of your right foot, which will pivot your body to the left. This pushing off procedure takes advantage of having your feet turned in at the proper angles. Notice that your lower body does not leave its central location on the bench. Your body should not follow your feet up and down the pedal board. This would certainly make your organ practicing an aerobic activity. When playing the pedals, you are working with larger muscle groups than when playing the manuals. However, you should have as little movement as possible. Your legs should not lift as if you are stomping ants on the pedal board. The movement for sounding the pedal comes from the ankle. Pivoting is accomplished by pushing off of pedals, not by pulling your body around with your thigh muscles or your hands. On the piano, when you want to play fast, you need to make sure that your keystroke does not involve a lot of extra motion, which will slow you down. The same thing happens with the pedals. As you play faster, you must be even more careful to avoid excess movement. Previously, we examined extra finger legato techniques which are used on the organ keyboard. We will now take a look at some special legato techniques on the pedals. Just as in the hands, one of the most common techniques is substitution, either toe to heel or foot to foot. In toe-heel substitution, you strike the pedal with one part of your foot and then change to the other part. You can either lead with your heel or with your toe. In foot-to-foot substitution, you strike the pedal with one foot, generally with the toe, and switch to the other foot, either behind or in front, whichever is more comfortable. Crossing is another useful legato technique. In this technique, you move one foot toward the front of the pedal board and cross the other foot behind. When crossing over to black notes, you will generally have to move the bottom foot to the back. Finally, we sometimes use slides to connect black pedals to white pedals. The key to playing slides successfully on the pedals is to maintain the downward pressure and the turned-in position of your foot as you perform the slide. One rather unusual pedal technique involves playing glissandos on the pedal board. There are other advanced pedal techniques as well as the glissando technique you just saw. For example, composers sometimes ask organists to play more than one note at a time in the pedals. Churches generally allow you to use your hands as well as your feet to play hymns, so it is not necessary to master this technique initially. Speaking of hymns, let's try playing a hymn with both the hands and feet together. Generally, we will be playing the pedal parts legato and tying the repeated notes except at the ends of phrases. Let's try the hymn Holy, Holy, Holy. Be sure to work out the pedaling in advance. If you choose to use the breaking technique wherein you separate repeated notes in both the soprano and bass, you will need to practice these two parts together carefully. This is an effective technique for reinforcing the tempo of a hymn, either to make the hymn sound more lively or to inspire a congregation with a tendency to drag the tempo. Let's experiment with the hymn All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name. For further information on hymn playing techniques, consult the video on hymn playing techniques and registrations.